the 30th of September 2021. I'm Dana Durford. Off to a good start tonight. TheNuclearProctologist.org. And you can call in 709-589-4406. Screwed up the intro. Here's a little intro song for you.
There will soon be an end to this cold and wicked war when those hard-headed communists get what they're looking for. Only one thing that will stop them and their atrocious fun. If General MacArthur drops an atomic bomb, there'll be fire, dust, and metal flying all around, and the radioactivity will burn them to the ground. If there's any commies left, they'll be all on the run. If General MacArthur drops an atomic bomb.
I'll get that on repeat. I apologize. It's because I started to show off with the death cult, the secret society known as nuclear. They're a genocide machine, a disease machine. Researchers too frightened to get closer than 100 kilometers from the nuclear meltdowns. Which leads us to a poll tonight. Should nuclear scientists work at Fukushima nuclear meltdowns instead of the homeless people? We got 16 votes, and 100% of people think nuclear scientists should work at a nuclear meltdown. I never seen that coming. Wow. I thought it was just I was being picking on nuclear scientists. It's great not to be alone in this universe. They're too frightened to get within 100 kilometers of the meltdown. They're not going to the meltdown. They're too frightened to stay in North America. That's the NOAA, Americans NOAA plume model. And it's only based on venting. It doesn't include... This is just a fraction of the isotopes you have to worry about, by the way. It's not just cesium. Crazy, kooky industries. Officials emit a deadly... Think about that word, deadly, for the rest of the show, by the way. But deadly Fukushima meltdown cover-up. Corporation known as TEPCO's president said, "We lied about the meltdowns, and it was a cover-up." It's a grave issue, and it's an unprecedented nuclear disaster. In fact, all the media worldwide is calling Chernobyl the world's worst nuclear disaster. So all you got to do is to verify that is go to each media and put in Fukushima or Chernobyl, and you'll find the articles where they use that exact sentence. Fukushima, the world's second worst disaster, or Chernobyl, the world's worst nuclear disaster. That shows up every day somewhere, multiple places in the media. And that's about deceiving you and manipulating you and tricking you. Unpardonable breach of trust. So go back to 1957 to Sellafield, England. Used to be known as Windscale. And when they had a nuclear meltdown, again, they didn't get scientists to work at it. They didn't get nuclear power plant employees to volunteer. And they didn't get universities, academics, alumni, or students, or nuclear corporations to go to the nuclear meltdown. No! Why would you do something like that? Let's get the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. I put together graphics with the documentary up on the screen for everybody.
The police from the factory had turned up looking for volunteers. And they'd brought a bus, and they decided the best way to get the volunteers was to go to the cinema and volunteer the back 2 rows at the show to go into the factory to, as it turned out, to help push the fuel rods out of the reactor.
He could barely get the sentence out, but he got it out, and what a terrifying crime. This is the norm throughout history for the nuclear industry. And where they produce it, they use victims of society to go into the lethal zones. But it's much worse than that, unimaginably. Forbes, who are degenerate scumbags, said this is outrageous. And for them to say it, man, that's absurd. But they actually said it. We got it on print. Homeless people are being sold to companies. Homeless people. So should nuclear academics and nuclear scientists work at Fukushima instead of the homeless people? Is that like a stupid idea? Hi, everybody. So what's the vote? We got 20 votes, 100% yes. I'm shocked. Where's the pro-nuclear spammers to? Government-funded shelters. So homeless people being sold to go to work at it. Water cannons can't spray it. Do you think that's going to change? The helicopters can't get near it. Do you really think that changed? And that high radiation forced the withdrawal of workers originally. They didn't come back, just the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. In fact, when the regular crew ran away because of the detonations, the 311 tapes showed that the government and authorities, whatever that is, some kooky cult, death cult, it's time to make a geezer or suicide squad. And they even appealed to the day workers, companies that hire the homeless and destitute.
Another example, immediately after the first hydrogen explosion, TEPCO gave out an order a request to all of these labor dispatching companies, and they said, send us people who don't mind dying.
Send us people who don't mind dying. So then the question really is, should nuclear scientists and nuclear engineers and everybody and nuclear plant employees, nuclear universities, all get their butts on down to Fukushima? Give the homeless a day off. Now, if you're watching this later, give me a thumbs up if you think that scientists should replace the homeless and destitute and victims of society. TEPCO admits it'll run out of scientists in 5 years? Or TEPCO admits it'll run out of workers in 5 years? Or C, TEPCO will run out of homeless in 5 years? If you said C, then congratulations. You want 5 buckets of horse manure. You got to come pick it up right away and bring your own lids. All of eastern Japan evacuated. The Fukushima plant was abandoned. All of Fukushima, eastern Fukushima, which is that, where they don't, for 10 years, 55 countries banned the food from all those prefectures, because, you know, radiation is so good for you, right? So good for you. So imagine that all of eastern Japan evacuated if you run out of homeless. Oh, and seniors sought for frontline radiation cleanup. They're commenting the nuclear industry is like, get rid of the old people. They worked all their life, now they're smart, and they got time to realize what happened to them, and they can tell the truth, see? In fact, those 60 and older should be prepared to die at Fukushima plant. Does that sound like nuclear scientists that are 60 and older? Or retired nuclear academics, maybe? No. In fact, they suggested a Fukushima draft right across the country. Because your power plant broke down, so everybody now needs to be disappeared. Yeah, you work all your life. You work hard all your life. You finally reach an age where you can retire. You're one of the lucky few to make it that far, by the way. But that's a lot of work, and their solution is just to get rid of you. Not send in nuclear scientists. So the question is, should nuclear scientists work at the Fukushima nuclear meltdown instead of the homeless people? And the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language. Because the work is going to go on for 10,000 years, longer than the human history. 16,000 workers quit. 16,000. Now, does that sound like nuclear scientists or nuclear students? They're not quitters, are they? Fukushima decontamination workers were threatened. We were punished if we tried to resist. Does that sound like nuclear scientists to anybody? So imagine if nuclear scientists came out and said, we were punished if we tried to resist. It'll be everywhere, right? But because it's just the disadvantage and victims of society, we've been taught by Hollywood and video games, just desensitized. We're not even, the majority, well, we are, but the majority of people don't have human emotions anymore. They take a camera out and watch you getting stabbed to death, but they won't they won't call the police. They'll just take a video so they can put it up on their Facebook or Instagram or something. You know, you lost the battle there. We were punished if we tried. So then the question is, they're not going to punish nuclear scientists that way, so send nuclear scientists down there. Obviously, they're being bullied, just as they're being... This, like death camps is what Fukushima actually is. UN official astounded that the homeless are taking to work at Fukushima ready to die. They're not ready to die. They're ready to be sacrificed. Their bosses are ready for them to die. The nuclear industry is definitely ready for them to die. At the end of the month, they're left with no pay. Imagine how cruel the nuclear industry actually is to do something like that. Imagine how completely detached of humanity you got to be to sit in silence about that. The whole nuclear industry is like, la 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 la. Does that sound like nuclear scientists to you? Or does that sound like victims, homeless of society? Mentally handicapped are working at... Well, it could be nuclear scientists. They're mentally handicapped, Dana. I know. But these mentally handicapped don't have an education. And they don't know any better. So why are nuclear scientists refusing going to this harmless nuclear meltdown? Why is the entire nuclear industry, all the universities, all the nuclear power plant, I've had nuclear power plants get in my comment section and say, don't blame us. Did you volunteer to go to Fukushima and fix it? If not, shut up. Or I'll find you and shut you up. Often given second-hand paper suits. How can you call what they're wearing radiation suits? What kind of demented, sadistic, twisted, soulless person are they to suggest that paper suits are radiation suits? Go down to Fukushima and tell the workers that they're radiation suits. They'll pull your head right off your shoulder, right on the spot. Nuclear industry predators, right? They think they're predators. But that's because most people don't know the difference. So all I do is run an educational program and saying, It's a nuclear meltdown. Shouldn't we be putting in a nuclear scientist? If you agree with that, then go ahead and vote yes. The nuclear scientists should be sent to the nuclear meltdown instead of all the victims and homeless. The unskilled and destitute are the hiring targets for Fukushima cleanup. Help Wanted Ad seeks employees that can carry out a conversation. Does that sound like nuclear scientist to anybody? Fukushima workers, some people not being given food. Just imagine if all of this was nuclear scientists are not being given any food. And they got no place to go. We always need new nuclear scientists. It's terrible here. Can you imagine nuclear scientists saying that? How about nuclear scientists say, the co-workers got bad tempers. And the co-workers are using violence against us nuclear scientists. And us nuclear scientists are not to cause any trouble, like fight while we're at Reactor 3. Imagine somebody, nuclear scientists coming out and saying, nuclear scientists are not allowed to cause any trouble, like fight with each other while they're at the mixed oxide meltdown. We'll get the news. We'll come up with some solutions probably then, wouldn't we? If you agree with me, we should send a nuclear scientist down there. Give me a thumbs up or give me a vote if you're catching the live show. Costs us little and goes a long way. So, imagine nuclear scientists coming up saying, the co-workers are violent, got tempers, and you can't touch the death, Ash. You wake the frig up then, wouldn't you? Imagine nuclear scientists come out complaining, TEPCO raised the safe radiation limit to 500 times original. We're not Spider-Man and the Hulks, we're nuclear scientists. This is outrageous. Somebody stop them. From 180 counts per minute to 100,000 counts per minute. So do you think they done that to nuclear scientists? Or they done it to the homeless and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language, huh? How about a nuclear scientist coming out and saying, I wanted to escape from Fukushima nuclear plant, but feared he might hurt me. Imagine nuclear scientists saying, at parties we were forced to eat radioactive mushrooms and radioactive bee larvae gathered from inside the nuclear wasteland. They called my ma to tell her I was in trouble. I'm just a lowly nuclear scientist. Will the world please stand up? I bet you they stand up for him. Excuse me. Imagine nuclear scientists saying, Fukushima workers, I was asked to fake documents and underage nuclear scientists are employed there. Or imagine nuclear scientists saying, mentally disabled nuclear scientists are working at the Fukushima Daiichi. And many nuclear scientists are forced to go to the plant. And the nuclear scientists are treated like disposable people. So if you think nuclear scientists should go to the nuclear power plant instead of all the homeless, vote yes. What? Somebody voted that nuclear scientists shouldn't go to the nuclear meltdown? That's a nuclear scientist. Mom, Dana's making fun of the nuclear scientists. Come down. Worldwide, that's happening right now as we speak. Top Tokyo doctor dealing with nuclear scientists demands the government step in at Fukushima because some of the nuclear scientists can't even read. Right? That would come out in the media. Nuclear scientists had the problem. We'd come up with solutions, wouldn't we? We'd get our asses in gear. Hell, I get my ass in gear. Imagine nuclear scientists coming out to the major media saying, nuclear scientists are tricked to being on the front line of Fukushima. Nuclear scientists can't escape. They kept the nuclear scientists in a shed. There's nowhere else to go. Nuclear scientists are stuck. The nuclear scientists are brainwashed. And after a few days, the nuclear scientists are thrown away like paper towels. Yeah, bloody well get some solutions then, wouldn't we? If you agree with me, give me a thumbs up if you're watching this later. And if you're watching now, give me a thumbs up and give me a vote up. Imagine nuclear scientists coming out and saying, TEPCO paid for the creation of a blacklist of nuclear scientists, which you've probably actually done, of actors and musicians who are against the nuclear industry. TEPCO paid for the creation. A corporation paid to get their hands on a list of pro-nuclear actors and musicians so they can censor them. A corporation! What kind of society is this place anyway? I'm confused. Where's the men on this planet? Where's the voices on this planet? How can the world just sit in silence? You think this is over? You got any idea how late it is? How far down the friggin' hole we actually are? Nice, hang around. I got some great shit coming up. Nuclear activists to be constantly spied on. Constantly spied on. Yay! Which is what they're doing to me, obviously. No one's ever come out and ran an educational program. You think they're not all over me? They got no one to pick on, for goodness sakes. All's out there is controlled opposition, except for a handful of people at best. 12 million yen, they're public speakers, what I'm talking about. 12 million yen to censor Twitter. 50,000 Canadian. Twitter took 50,000 so they can release dirty bombs in a city. Yeah? Oh, hell yeah, we'll take that. The agency, Japanese government, which is the captured government. The university's been captured. The media's been captured. The regulators were captured in increments over the last 7 decades. But it's death cult known as nuclear. Round-the-clock monitoring of blogs on nuclear-powered Twitter accounts. What do you think that means? I got almost 400 subscribers in the last month or so. And I can't get 25 people on my show at the beginning. They just subscribed to me, for goodness sakes, and then forgot about me. People are being unsubscribed constantly, by the way. Agency funding projects to monitor online info about Fukushima crisis. Public outcry over Japan's government monitoring narratives about the nuclear meltdown. The whole nuclear industry is doing this. This is what the nuclear industry has been doing all along. We just figured it out. It just showed up one day and we was like, what the hell does all this mean? Agency funding project to monitor online info about Fukushima and around-the-clock monitoring of blogs and nuclear narratives. The New York Times, TEPCO, the corporation, which is, by the way, supposed to be in capital letters, their New York Times, has worked vigilantly to shut out close scrutiny of the ravaged plant's conditions. TEPCO paid for the creation of a blacklist. It's a shocking statement. The British government. Here we go again. Yeah, we'll get there. The British government was deeply involved in blatant conspiracy designed to manipulate the facts. It was a very effective attempt to calm the reporting of the true story, to bury the truth of Fukushima. Deeply involved. Yeah, no, and so was Taiwan, right? 2,000 nuclear students just spammed the internet with propaganda. It's the first thing students learn in nuclear is to create propaganda to protect their job and their pensions. Leaked email shows the British government and exterminate you, by the way, and all species. Leaked email shows the British government worked with nuclear companies on PR campaigns to downplay Fukushima, and that the degree of collusion. The leaked emails were, a lot of it was redacted. There's over 4 million of them. Degree of collusion, they're not leaked, they're declassified. Degree of collusion was truly shocking. EDF, France, is EDF, Areva, which is France again, and Westinghouse. A British official told Areva, we need to squash any stories trying to compare this to Fukushima or Chernobyl. We need to ensure the anti-nuclear chaps and chapnists do not gain ground on this. And we need to occupy the territory and hold it. That should make you throw up, preferably on a nuclear academic. Pregnant women get a free new house if they move back to Fukushima. This shows you this incredible disconnect, but in everybody in the nuclear industry, all the proponents of nuclear particularly. Government refuses to provide funds to research Fukushima effect. So therefore, isn't it about time that nuclear scientists actually went to the nuclear meltdown instead of the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language, and the destitute and the homeless? Because that's who's there. Not your brothers, not your sisters, not your friends, not your neighbors, not your companies, and not your country. Not nuclear plant employees, not laboratories, nuclear laboratories, not experts from Hanford, none from MIT or Stanford or Oxford or Yale or the Commonwealth, but victims of society. Have we failed? Miserably? Debauchery? Indeed. Japan's government kept the meltdown risk a secret. No. The nuclear industry worldwide, who didn't need any input from Japan to assess what was going on at all. The evidence was on their Geiger counters in their countries. Kept meltdown risk secret. The nuclear industry spokesman replaced after letting it slip out during a press conference. Nuclear industry withheld a radiation forecast to prevent causing a panic worldwide. Nuclear scientists says radiation forecasts withheld by the nuclear industry, nuclear scientists, because releasing that would cause the loss of nuclear scientists' pensions. And the nuclear scientists decided that such data would be unavailable due to loss of power to the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry hid the radiation simulations because it was very, very bad for the nuclear industry. And that the nuclear industry know that you had serious contamination over the entire planet. Fukushima forecast can by no means be released to the public, decided the nuclear industry, the World Nuclear Association. To decry, showed radioactive cloud had spread over Tokyo area, so nuclear academics worldwide contacted the nuclear industry and said, you better keep your mouth shut. Fukushima child, I didn't know about the nuclear disaster until April, the next month. Small kids were playing outside. They were even playing in the radioactive snow. Radiation around Fukushima nearing levels where humans vomit uncontrollably and that the hair can be stripped from the body. Harvard University had 4 nuclear academics, and they all looked like they saw a ghost. And when they were asked questions, they would speak in the lowest voice possible for a microphone to pick up. And they talked about many tens of sievers the plumes were in the communities close by. And this is what they had said. It can cause uncontrollable vomiting. It can strip the hair from your body. It's lethal doses. There was 3,000 people that ran away through the plume, ended up in shelters, and then had to be taken to hospitals. And the scum, degenerate, coward nuclear industry, for many years now, has been spreading propaganda, sometimes focused on that one facet, and blaming it on evacuation. Now, we've had evacuations worldwide, millions of people, for hurricanes and cyclones and typhoons. And we've never seen 3,000 people have to get rushed to hospitals. This was right away, within the first week. They all had one thing in common. They evacuated because the bloody plume came out. And the nuclear industry has seized upon that to discredit it in increments over the last decade constantly. We've covered it here many, many, many times. Enough to actually make you sick. Nuclear industry withheld the radiation forecast to prevent causing a panic worldwide. The worldwide nuclear industry kept their pie holes shut. Originally, some spoke up, and we'll cover some of that. U.S. government kept the worst case, the nuclear industry, the U.S. nuclear industry, a very powerful industry, kept the worst case Fukushima scenario secret from the entire planet and their own friends and families. Possibility of radiation exceeding safe levels for thyroid doses in Alaska. We're actually over-receivered. This is France's model of the radioactive fallout. That's the Pacific, a continuous plume. And that's the Atlantic. And that's Europe. It's absurd. All of the United States and Canada, Mexico, all of the entire planet. And this model is the 26th of March. It's 15 days. The entire planet now was a continuous, invisible plume. And it's still there. It's global warming. It's pulsing energy every second at the speed of light. The entire biosphere now is a great big machine creating heat because of nuclear. And this also, you've got to put in that equation, 440 fuel pools worldwide just hemorrhaging isotopes into the environment 24/7. No containment, straight into the atmosphere from all of them, because you take the fuel that's producing, splitting the atoms, powers 1 million homes, right? And it's in a containment, allegedly. But they bring in 1,000 workers to open it up. They don't want their own employees doing it because they don't want them sick. Bring in transient workers, 1,000 of them, change the fuel every 18 months. The place is surrounded by farms. Look it up yourself. All of them are surrounded by farms to poison you another way. This is a death cult. The 100% death cult we're looking at, of all species. What gives them the right to poison the entire biosphere with pulses like this? You need to start asking yourself some really, really hard questions, because we are in real trouble. Map shows the Fukushima fallout in the United States. Doses in the Northeast and Great Lakes were equal to the West Coast. Yeah, no shit. They were so. Radiation forecasts withheld by the nuclear industry, releasing it would cause unnecessary panic. The nuclear industry decided that they would lose power. Wrap your mind around it. Fukushima nuke report was so shocking, the nuclear industry decided to treat it as if it didn't even exist. That's called cowards. It's called cowards. You think those cowards should go down to the nuclear meltdown and work down there instead of the homeless? Give us a vote up. Displace that single idiot that said that nuclear scientists shouldn't go to Fukushima. Who's stupid? Who's so stupid that they said that, I wonder? No, they shouldn't go. Just keep throwing the homeless at it, because that'll fix it. Massive radioactive waste buildup in Tokyo suburbs. Radiation after a single rainfall of 29 million gamma, not counting neutrons and alpha and beta, but just gamma, per square meter in the soil after a rainfall. That's forever. You're going to eat food from the nuclear meltdown site? You can't even eat food from Tokyo, for goodness sakes. You're a lunatic if you eat food from Japan. You're a monster. So Canada and the United States and EU, a handful of people, have signed a piece of paper saying they can ship food in from a nuclear wasteland. And we don't have to check it. Not that nuclear scientists ever checked it. But go ahead and murder them all now. They've been dumping it straight into the ocean, right from get-go. In Tokyo. How bad do you think it is at ground zero? Tokyo began burning massive amounts of radioactive waste from the disaster area. You're going to burn dirty bombs in your own community? You morons. You literally and figuratively are morons. Or you're incredibly evil. Surely nobody can be that stupid, that moronic to think that burning radiation, all you're doing is liberating the radiation into the environment again for millions of years. It's literally the stupidest thing that anybody can do. So is it any big surprise that no nuclear scientists have ever went to the Fukushima nuclear meltdown? Is there anybody out there actually believes that nuclear scientists went to nuclear meltdowns? You can call in. I'd love to hear how stupid you actually are. Yeah, I'm sure you got to take you a few minutes to find somebody to dial the phone for you. Obviously, you can't dial the phone if you think that nuclear scientists shouldn't go to a nuclear meltdown. The Economist. The positive side of Fukushima, kids just need to gargle after being irradiated. And that's something that children mostly do anyway. Whoever actually said that should have their head pulled off, stuffed in a soccer ball and given to the children to play with. Alice in Wonderland used to convince the children in Japan that nuclear power is safe. You tell me that's not a cult. You tell me that's not one of the most despicable, revolting things imaginable. Well, hang around because we got tons of that. Nuclear scumbags have infiltrated universities and captured the key positions, the professorships, the administration. They have captured your medias worldwide symmetrically. They have captured your government key positions for energy policies and disposal and investigative divisions so they can investigate themselves. They captured your regulators. Imagine a scientist, because this actually makes sense after everything you've seen, right? It is the duty of the scientific community to reduce the public's fear and anxiety about radiation. So whoever said that, just lock them up forever. Give them some water and a cracker each day till they stop whining forever. Imagine how revolting that person is. Imagine that person actually might have kids, and you guess what, where they're going to be working? So a lot of people, it's hard to appreciate, but a lot of wars are staged events. They attack themselves and blame it on the country. And that country now supports the government to go to war. Oh, you can't let them attack us. Get over there, blow up their country. You had a massive earthquake in 2011. Allegedly, Osama bin Laden was killed. Hey, that took over the media, yeah? No proof of it. They dumped the body at sea, no pictures, no nothing. By the way, Osama had 10 people who looked just like him, surgically altered. The man of 1,000 faces. I always walked barefoot. The Egyptian president, that was just ate up the media in 2011. The Ben Ali had fled Tanzania, ate up the media. What they done to Gaddafi, my God, that ate the media. That was a total distraction, yeah? That was something, wasn't it? In fact, the nuclear scientists were hoping that the Libya war news would now downgrade Fukushima. Because that's what happened. They done it. It was the military, the nuclear industry done it to him. They actually stuck a stick on live stream up his. They used, I won't get graphic, but they used a knife so they can get a 2x4 while he was alive up his chummy, live streaming it, and then the media went into a frenzy for like a whole month. Prince William got married. You couldn't even walk into a shop without all the magazines, tabloids. It was everywhere. You couldn't turn on TV. You couldn't. Your neighbors were blaring "God Save the Queen." It was a horrible experience on this planet. The English riots then hit right after it. Oh, and Steve Jobs dies. Whoa, and his pictures were leaked. A walking stick. And English riots again. And then Kim Jong-un just ate up 2011. There goes bye-bye 2011 and bye-bye Fukushima. Fukushima was forgotten because the world was still paying attention, but for the most of the people, they were caught up in that media frenzy. And most of these events could have been staged as a way to downgrade for the nuclear industry. This, you think they're killing everybody? They won't stoop to something like this. You better give your head a shake. And when it falls off, give it a kick. Corporation known as United Nations, the pro-nuclear industry, says we wouldn't expect to see health effects in children or workers or anybody else. Workers, homeless. If you think nuclear scientists and UN should go to Fukushima, give us a bit of a vote. Fukushima superheroes tells kids the arch enemy is bad reputation for nuclear crisis, and that fights against fools and sloppy people. Superhero, Fukushima superhero. They're going to fix it. He's just going to tell children to ignore it. We got to stop these sorts of reports coming out. International conference warns that the media talk of Fukushima health effects may be harmful. Guess who said that? You guessed it. Jerry Thomas. I covered her last night, right? At Imperial College of London and Robert Gale. Actual monsters, yeah? I played those clips of these people. That's actually what they done and are continuing to do. That's the definition of real monsters. Fukushima newspaper editor. We don't report on the health risks from radiation. Pro-nuclear newspaper editor. We don't report on health risks from radiation. Why have you got 100 sirens around a nuclear power plant? Well, activists made them put them there first off. But they're there in case there's a release. And it's wherever the wind's blown from, as long as it's not from the plant, run towards that. But there's only one road out of town, Dana. Yeah, I know, and so do they. The very lowest levels, they don't care about you or Earth. They don't care about Earth. In fact, they hate Earth, and I can prove that. I already have tonight, certainly. The very lowest levels of radiation are harmful to life, and we have to rethink exposure levels from the nuclear plants. They're hemorrhaging radiation. Nobody's paying attention. In fact, like, it's no good for me to tell it to you. I got to show it to you, because otherwise, it's fear-mongering. My dad fear-mongering. Make him stop. Well, tell the authorities, honey. We'll get them. We'll tell the authorities that he's picking on nuclear. We live in this very strange time. It's hard to appreciate how strange nuclear actually is, but I think I could kind of help you wrap your mind around it. Bear with me. We're almost here. Yeah, it's a strange one. So this one is, I'm just going to flick through this to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, all right. So, all nuclear power plants have one thing in common. Can you guess what it is? What do they all got in common? Look at it. Go look it all up yourself, as far as you can see, in every direction. As far as you can see, they all got this one thing in common. I'm not going to tell you because hopefully it's obvious. What do they got in common, Dana? I don't know. See if you can help me. Chalk River. One of the world's first nuclear meltdowns. They all got the one thing in common. It's the strangest thing. As far as you can see in any direction, you'll always see the same thing around all nuclear power plants. And it ain't good. If you eat food from a farm, I want you to know that 50 becquerels a kilogram is irreversible damage for children's heart. And that even future nuclear power plants like this one in the United Kingdom is going to be surrounded by, you guessed it, farms. I was just completely shocked. I was like 50%, right? When I started researching altitude shots of nuclear power plants. I wasn't expected every single nuclear power plant. I got over 100 in a row, and every one of them is surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. Their fuel pools and all of these plants got decades of reactor cores that are still able to power 1 million homes, but they're too fragile. They're still splitting the atoms, see? This is why they put them in pools, because they're going to boil off that pool every day, and all of it's going to be saturated with isotopes, trillions per liter, and then that evaporates, now liberates the isotope like an invisible snowstorm that just floats around, infesting and infecting all species. Incredible slow kill that's guaranteed to wipe out all species. Unequivocally guaranteed to wipe out all species is doing that. And you're going to have to stop that. You can't have 440 reactors hemorrhaging, splitting the atoms into the environment. Officials admit decontamination, by the way, only for reducing external exposures in a nuclear wasteland. You can't, like the Nagasaki Hiroshima victims, for 75 years have fought to be recognized as inhaling radiation. Because for 75 years, every government in Japan, around Nagasaki, Hiroshima, and the government of Japan itself has refused to acknowledge that the victims at ground zero inhaled radiation. Because that changes everything if they actually do that. That's the definition of evil, see? Air samples in Tokyo 270 times more contaminated, and they're only talking about cesium, one of 1,000 fission products you better worry about, than global weapons follow peak. And cesium is one you can find, but it's weaponized to deceive you. It's like cancer. I don't see clusters of cancer. Just clusters of heart attacks and liver problems and lung problems and respiratory, pituitary, thyroid and adrenaline and Alzheimer's and dementia, autism, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. There's clusters of that, but not cancer. Come back in 20 years, you'll find a cancer. Right now, there's 1,800 illnesses floating around. New model shows the West Coast covered in Fukushima fallout a week after. Yeah? It was actually quicker than a week. Look at it. The entire Northern Hemisphere in 15 days. The public is anything but safe outside of the evacuation zone. Hundreds of miles. There's 5,500 miles. There's 10,000. There's 15,000. There's 20,000. Crap. There's the whole planet in an invisible plume of radiation. Goodbye, insects, in increments over the next few years. Here's a study showing xenon, which burns a hole through your lung and sequesters in your bones and then starts mutating your stem cells. By the way, it does that to insects and birds and mammals and animals too. Not just you, so don't feel bad for all the birds and insects and mammals and animals. One of the first things it does is wipes out the phytoplankton at the surface of the ocean. There goes 50% of the oxygen on the planet permanently. Lack of oxygen, people do what? Stupid shit, right? Guess where we're headed for? You guessed it. 450,000 times above detection levels. That's the gallows laugh, by the way. Nobel Prize winner. The only way to preserve all life on Earth is to completely turn away from degenerate scum nuclear power. Major U.S. newspaper. It's time to quit scum degenerate nuclear power altogether. It threatens the very existence of all species. The leading director in Japan says scum degenerate nuclear power generation is the only invention may destroy the future of all species. Not may, but will, obviously. Nuclear power. Not nuclear war, but nuclear power. Miko Kaku, a famous physicist from California, says human civilization may destroy itself. I mean, look at Fukushima. Oh yeah, look at it, baby. Look at it. I'm going to speed it up even more. That model doesn't stop just because the model did. The radiation didn't stop coming out. That ain't never gonna stop. So then the question is, should we send nuclear scientists to the nuclear meltdowns and try to come up with some solutions? Should nuclear scientists... Hi, everybody. Should nuclear scientists work at the Fukushima nuclear meltdown instead of the homeless? That's the question. I think that's a pretty valid question. We're supposed to abandon the Northern Hemisphere, you realize that, right? And take all the insects and birds and animals with us too. There is no debate. There's just lies, right? There's no debate about if nuclear got some... Nuclear has no redeeming qualities on top of this. Zero. Particularly in the hospitals, that's murder. Giving people radiation in hospitals, that's murder, man. That's why you got to sign a piece of paper, right? They know it's murder. If we do nothing, even Tokyo could become off limits. That could be. Tokyo was pounded, I showed you already. You're supposed to abandon Tokyo, 36 million people. The nuclear industry doesn't tell the truth. Japan's senior government official. Ozawa, we may not be able to live in Japan someday. Well, by right, you can't live in Japan or Canada or United States or Europe because of Fukushima. Radiation is going to be flowing out for a long time. Good time, baby. Long time. See, and this shows you how evil nuclear industry actually is. Rather than let the children evacuate, they took them on field trips so they have less radiation doses that day. Take them on field trips so they get less radiation. That gives their body a break for a few hours. Nuclear scientists says, no, that's good. No, don't evacuate them. Well, what's Fukushima like? What the hell is Fukushima? I've never been to Fukushima. I ain't going. You try to drag a nuclear scientist to Fukushima, you claw your eyes out, they bite your toes off, they'd be screaming, no, please, Dana, no. You'd be hauling by the hair. I'd drag them there by the hair of their head. If I had a 4-foot lead suit, robotic suit I could wear. I ain't wearing no paper suit. Japan Times column, as the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time, the truth will come out. There's a play on words. Let's redo that for you. Japan Times column, as the public, and not possibly, but worldwide, gets sick over time. That's all the species too. The nuclear industry will be beaten to death with baseball bats. Okay, I put those words in there. They weren't actually there, but that's the way I was trying to remember what the words are, and that's what I seen when I was looking up. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history, and obesity rates are now nearly double the Japan average. Obesity, excessive weight gain after a nuclear crisis, is a marker of your brain being damaged and you're producing chemicals that have now made you obese. And you just see that spike since a decade ago. Also, pneumonia cases surged. Lung disease, right? Fatal radiation levels found at Fukushima. So do you really think nuclear scientists are anywhere within that area? Unprecedented spike of just sulfur in California's air per cubic meter. 1,500 atoms. Now, because there's 1,000 different types of atoms floating around at the same time because of this scum-coward, unregulated industry. It's not regulated. They captured the regulation industry and appointed the worst of the nuclear industry in those positions of authority. They done the same thing with the United Nations, and the IAEA is all scumbags. If you looked at what they'd done before it, these were scumbags, or their children, or their wife was, right? And if we took actual DNA of these creatures, you find out they were not even humans. They're actually creatures. They don't have the same DNA as humans. They were supposed to be drowned at birth. Tends to concentrate in the testicles. 360 atoms of sulfur every day, and all the humans being sequestered in the genitals. And that includes birds and animals and mammals and insects, not just humans. Nuclear industry is unsure how to access areas as radiation levels around it are 10 sieverts per hour, and no nuclear scientist has ever went there. They're talking about the stacks far away from the nuclear plant meltdowns themselves on top of that. That's just the stacks of 10 over. It's actually 25 sieverts an hour at the base of the stacks. Their Geiger counters were maxed out at 10 sieverts, right? These are stationary Geiger counters. And they're surrounded by dead homeless people on the ground. Deliberate cover-up of public's exposure to Fukushima radiation and the health problems they're suffering from. This is nuclear industry's biggest problem. The nuclear industry's continual, purposeful concealment of all facts and a distortion of any truth. And the nuclear industry will not properly report what's going on because they captured the media in increments over the last 75 years. Significantly high levels may be spread during decommission work. Maybe. You really think the homeless are enthusiastic about their job or something? TEPCO confirms the China syndrome. The steam coming out of the ground because some of the reactor cores, like reactor 2, has gone straight down into the earth. The fuel pool caught fire and burned almost for a whole week. It hemorrhaged out the side of the buildings. Now 4.7 sieverts per hour, 20% more than in June. It didn't stop coming up. These are lethal zones. They abandoned the site basically for several years. There's lethal doses everywhere. There were 6 places where the earth is cracked because of the detonations from the China syndrome hitting the water tables. Water expands 1,200 feet per liter. It's a 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature, 5 million pounds of that hitting the water table detonates, splits the earth. And then that steam that's coming up is lethal doses. Lethal doses. Everything it touches now, it's coating in lethal doses too, by the way. And so what their solution was, is when it stops temporarily, it'll come in, they'll bury everything under 2 or 3 feet of cement, steel sheets, 16 by 10 foot sheets of steel and pavement. And then they'll do that again on top of that and send in the victims of society, the immigrants that don't speak the language, and the destitute and the homeless. And if they start dropping, then run away, come back, see if anybody dies. If not, then do the same thing again. Cement, steel sheets, pavement, send in more homeless. That's been the routine now for a decade. If you lose control of the site, we're going to lose more than Japan. They've lost Japan though, right? Imagine the China syndrome, steam coming out of the ground is lethal doses. It's hard to wrap your mind around steam coming out of the ground, yeah? This is from a nuclear magna, a liquefied nuclear reactor cores. 1,000 years from now, contaminated, incredibly lethal water will be entering the Pacific Ocean. It never stopped. They can't contain it. They're not, because there's only homeless there. No nuclear scientists will go there. Therefore, if you think nuclear scientists should go there, then congratulations. You got everybody symmetric, except somebody must have accidentally clicked no, I guess. Nobody could be that stupid to actually click it on purpose. 50 becquerels a kilogram in your food that they now okayed 100 becquerels a kilogram to come into your country in the United States and Canada and the EU and Norway and Iceland in the last week from 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima, by the way. They're not even checking it, and they're only talking about cesium on top of that. 50 becquerels a kilogram, just a single exposure like that will cause irreversible lesions to your vital organs. If you're going to eat it all day, in a few years' time, everybody's dying is going to be tested positive as they died for COVID, right? That's what they're up to. COVID is the cover-up from all these illnesses, the die-offs. It usually starts heavily after about 10 years. Usually it affects the species first, so we've done the research. We've seen all the species extinction event disappear. Now we're next. Radiation health specialists, children with 11 becquerels a kilogram in their food start to see heart problems. That was Chernobyl's study. Irreversible heart damage at 50 becquerels a kilogram. So it's not just going to be heart, there's just endless. You compromise your immune system, you're now more susceptible to viruses and pathogens that were normally innocuous and benign and harmless, right? Incinerating radioactive material could contaminate the environment. Really? Could? As in maybe? So releasing dirty bombs could contaminate the environment. Or incinerating dirty bombs will contaminate the environment. That's a Japanese newspaper. But as a headline, right? Incinerating radioactive material could contaminate the environment, nuclear industry. Hello? And they're like, yeah, of course. That's why we're doing it. We hate you and we hate all life. That's the nuclear industry. La 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 la. Fukushima will start burning radioactive waste 100,000 becquerels a kilogram. They love you so much. Love you long time. They kill you quick as they can. Surge in airborne radioactive release has gone on for years at Fukushima, exceeding 25,000 times normal levels. You think nuclear scientists are down there? Let's come up with a solution. Somebody out there's probably cold enough. 300 times more radiation released into the atmosphere from burning debris than claimed by the nuclear industry. Radioactive fallout could have affected the whole world. Oh, it's BBC. BBC, of course, had Jimmy Savile there, who raped over 1,000 very, very young children at the BBC itself. And all the media helped rebuild the BBC after that by promoting their stories constantly on their web pages for the next year and a half, 2 years straight. It was unreal. It shows you that having any corporation own, like Rupert Murdoch with 600 medias, same picture, same narrative, same paragraphs, same author at the same time, around the world, is brutal brainwashing. Former top IAEA official, I got out of there, man, they're crazies. Actually, Fukushima is a catastrophe for all humans and all species of the world. Radiation doesn't recognize borders. And the dose from Fukushima fallout in Europe many times higher than California. And California was brutal, man. That was brutal. Criminal charges for promoters of nuclear power. That'll be our next poll right there, look. That's our next poll right there, baby. That's our next poll. Criminal charges for supporters of nuclear power. I think that'll be one of the best polls we've ever had, yeah? Would you eat food from all these prefectures now that they lifted the restrictions? You know, the nuclear industry did. That's not evil. That's different than evil. That's murder. That's murder in corporate. That's what that is. I never dreamt I'd see today when you do something like that. Nuclear engineer. I agree that Fukushima can be an extinction event. An extinction event. There's about 1,000 kinds of fission products. You find cesium, there's another 1,000 fission products right there. Study finds giant strontium-90 release into the ocean begins after 1,000 days, which would put it up in December 2013, and that the discharges of just brutal bone seeker strontium discharges for tens of thousands of days following that. They're talking about absurd numbers. 100 times the strontium, or cesium. For every cesium, there's 100 times more strontium. Now, here's Yale University. They're not at Fukushima or nothing like that. They're scumbags. There's no way they're going to Fukushima. But they want to cover it up, though. So what they told you was, nothing like this has ever been attempted, says Yale nuclear lapdog. All of humanity will be threatened for thousands of years if the rods in the Unit 4 pull touch and have a nuclear reaction. Well, there's reactor 4. Well, it was. It should be like this. And the fuel pools they're talking about are at the top of the 190-foot building. 19-story building. 150 feet wide building. And decades of reactor cores are stored in those two pools. Well, they were. Because they got no repository anywhere in Japan or anywhere else, right? So the pools are stuffed full of reactor cores that are still splitting the atom. All that's vented, 120,000 liters minimum a day of absurd amount of radiation per liter. And then that is boiled off because they're still splitting the atom. So say if you got 6 reactor cores in the pool, in those two pools, let's just say that's all that's there. That's enough power each day for 6 million homes released as isotopes. But all they do is they pulse energy now every day forever. So every day the planet is being heated up even worse. So tomorrow the planet will create more heat than yesterday. And the day after that it's going to create more heat than the day before because you're adding another 24-hour cycle of atoms that would normally, that atoms is enough energy to power 1 million homes. But now that it's in the environment, let's say these pools, all nuclear sealed worldwide as just a way of articulating what I'm trying to tell you. That's so important. So imagine that there has never been any releases from Fukushima ever, or nuclear power anywhere, any nuclear bomb testing, no, nothing. But one of the employees accidentally left a fuel pool cover open. And so now all the reactor cores in the pool that are splitting the atom in a 24-hour cycle, say there's 6 reactor cores there, that's 6 million homes worth of electricity that's released. And so every day that's going to pull 6 million homes worth of electricity for tens of thousands of years. But imagine that they left the cover off the pool for 365 days. And there's 6 reactor cores stored there over 40 years. They're still splitting the atom. They're still producing the same power as you would produce each day to power 6 million homes. Because the reactor core powers 1 million homes by splitting the atom. But there's no containment in the pool. So now you got 365 reactors worth of energy floating around the planet, pulsing energy forever. Now multiply that by 440 over 70 years. But each day you're making more fuel, more reactor fuel is coming out and going in the pools. It's splitting the atom. But it's not just that stuff that's splitting the atom. All the nuclear byproduct, the whole cycle, all that material, all that waste, because they're only going to use a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent ultimately for fuel. It has to go through a chain reaction to produce the stuff they want. All the stuff left over is splitting the atom. Now that stuff, and now these nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms, like I showed you earlier. And so as you eat that food that is now bioaccumulated, the worst of the worst, the heavy elements, the curium, the uranium, the plutonium, you get up to 1,800 illnesses. But the nuclear academics know this, so they're saying, well, I don't see no clusters of cancer. And we didn't see any cesium on a Geiger counter. The Geiger counter can't pick up plutonium and uranium and curium and americium, neptunium and strontium, all the nasty stuff. And they know that. Their job is to brainwash you. Like I showed you all night long. This is what they do for a living. They brainwash you. They brainwash you. So when a Yale professor says that all humanity will be threatened for thousands of years if the reactor fuel pool rod touches, and it already did, what does that mean? That everybody at Yale University have participated in that deception. Not only that, but everybody at every other university participated in the deception because nobody called out the Yale professor saying that, hey, the fuel pool is gone, man. I don't know if you noticed it, but it blew up and caught fire and blew up. And it's gone. What the cover story is, no, it's not gone. In fact, the cover story, all the media participated in it too, not just that Yale professor, pretending they're at a fuel pool that actually didn't exist. Because if it goes off, right, it goes off, the isotopes that it produces are bad for planet Earth. So they kept up the lie saying airplane crash affecting the spent fuel pool, a key security issue for the future, 2012. This is 2013. The media is there, no, thank God they're getting the fuel out of the pool. But if they showed you both of those pictures, you'd be like, wait a second, they don't look the same. Doomsday-like radiation release of fire in the pool at Unit 4. It would be a global catastrophe. Doomsday-like radiation. If that building looks like that over there and not like this here. I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference? I can't tell the difference. I hope it don't blow up and catch fire and blow up and catch fire. That's all I can say. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine, says David Suzuki. I seen a paper that says it's bye-bye nipperheads and evacuate North America's west coast if the Unit 4 goes after the quake and the rods are exposed. Don't take my word, take the David Suzuki.
3 out of the 4 plants were destroyed in the earthquake and in the tsunami. The 4th one has been so badly damaged that the fear is if there's another earthquake of a 7 or above, that building will go, and then all hell breaks loose. I have seen a paper which says that if, in fact, the 4th plant goes under an earthquake and those rods are exposed, it's bye-bye Japan, and everybody on the west coast of North America should evacuate. Now, if that isn't terrifying, I don't know what. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine.
Yeah, but official blasts the nuclear industry over Fukushima. Such immoral people. They let the radioactive substances flow out freely and said nothing while contaminating the ocean. It's just absurd. Now they're trying to cover the whole thing up. Well, it's not just going in the ocean. It's airborne, baby. It's the whole biosphere. Pulsing energies, global warming in second gear, baby. Inhaling just one hot particle, everything's a hot particle from a nuclear meltdown. It doesn't produce harmless isotopes from a nuclear meltdown. Everything's a hot particle. And just one of them can cause a cancer, but there's 1,800 illnesses and diseases. Fukushima has humanity, which is all the species, by the way. Not just, you can't destroy humanity under these circumstances without all the other species. The effects on all the species' health are incomprehensible. Not really. March the 12th to the 16th. So in 4 days, look at a xenon plume. The 12th of May. Right there, look, that one. It's a continuous plume, right? So you got March, April, and then May. You see, it's a non-stop continuous plume, saturating everything, no breaks in between. There's no way it doesn't cover the southern hemisphere, by the way. It's absurd to suggest it doesn't. And that a single particle can cause a tumor, but there's 1,800 other illnesses will show up before the tumor is diagnosed. The tumor is because your white blood cells attack the radiation for years. You can die of leukemia within 1 week by eating the food from Japan. So if you're going to open up, you got lots of money, open up a little kiosk stand in front of all the nuclear industries, colleges and universities, and literally give it away to the starving nuclear scientists and students so we can get rid of them before they graduate. This is what they've done to your whole planet. You're going to sit in silence and let that just pretend it's not happening, not come up with no solutions? La 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 la. I'm a nuclear expert. Nothing can happen to me. La 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 la. The ocean wasn't covered 2,000 kilometers. Oceans, all the oceans were covered. Atlantic to Pacific, everything was covered. From the surface to the ocean floor, baby. In fact, this is 2021, January. The numbers have gone up for gray whales. Over 6,000 dead whales in 5 years. They all had one thing in common. They were emaciated. They starved to death. New York Times, the ocean life faces a mass extinction. We may be on the precipice of a major extinction event in marine wildlife. We're not, maybe we 100% unequivocally are now. We know, we've done the research expeditions for years. The West Coast bird die-off is the biggest ever recorded in history. Stomachs are completely empty. This was millions of them had starved to death. Common murres that would normally dive 600 feet all day long, their whole life. Far, far, far below the ocean waves. Radioactive sea spray has been shown to blow hundreds of kilometers inland. Because there's, like how insects, there's been studies showing how insects are acclimated to more salt in their diet up to 200 kilometers inland, 200 miles rather, inland, because sea spray goes at least that far, see? So insects in that particular area of 200 miles from the ocean are acclimated to a different pH level. Cesium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. From the surface to the ocean floor. Try wrapping your mind around that, what that actually means. That's forever. It's not cesium. It's uranium, plutonium. Curium is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. Animals on the West Coast dying in mass die-offs of all species. Cancers, liver, pancreas, intestines are shutting down, infested with parasites because they have no immune system, immune to antibiotics. Unlike anything's ever seen on the West Coast, where you've done the expeditions and documented it. Fukushima melted fuel is drifting into the ocean and on the land lacking containment. Well, of course, there's no containment on your coastline. It ends up on the coastline, blows into the communities. And there's studies out there showing over around Ireland and Scotland, because Sellafield had a mixed oxide fuel plant meltdown, MOX fuel plant meltdown, and it's hemorrhaging 8 million liters a day since 1957 into the ocean. That's going to go on for thousands of years into the Atlantic. And that's liberated now back into the communities through evaporation and rain. The ocean picks up tens of thousands, by the way, of kilometers of rain every day, lugs it into your coastline, where it hits the Cascade, the Rocky Mountains, the high elevations, loses a lot of the payloads, and then goes over that and rains in the rest of the country, right? But they always come in heavy. They hit the mountains, they lose their first payload. That washes back down through your estuaries, your streams, your rivers, and bye-bye species. It happens in increments over time, and time, we have run out of time. And it'll go on for tens of thousands of years. It looks like death. You can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up, but baby, it's there. And inhaling a single particle is pulsing in your body in every direction. It doesn't just like pulse laser beam. It's pulsing symmetrically. Think of imagine taking a balloon and filling it up with flour. Not filling it up, but a spoonful of flour in a balloon. Blow the balloon all the way up till it pops. And so you're going to see flour go in every single direction, right? That's what an atom does in your body. The anthropogenic man-made atom is also doing that in the environment every second, pulsing this energy in every direction. And it could pulse right through your body and into your partner's body all night long while you're sleeping, because this is man-made stuff. This is very energetic. This is not natural stuff that you're already acclimated to through genetic superior selection. And so, by a factor of a trillion, like nasty particles like americium or neptunium. This is Neptunium-29 dispersal model from Tokyo's emissions of releases. These are plume models covering the entire planet in brutal neptunium. In the history of science, we've never seen anything like the Fukushima plume. Why is Japan allowed to get away with contaminating the oceans? Well, it contaminated the oceans by air immediately, right? As I showed you up to now, no problem. It's impossible, by the way, to remove the thousands of radioactive material. I can't remember the number, but a long time ago, because I've been at this long before Fukushima happened, and I was reading a study how the military has around 10,000 isotopes that are classified, which you can imagine India is going to have the same thing in their military, and Russia is going to have the same thing in their military, and China is going to have the same attributes in their military where they have these classified isotopes. We only know about a fraction of what's actually created. Enormous amounts of contamination flowing from the Fukushima will probably imperil the entire Pacific Ocean. You really think it's just the Pacific? And threaten other countries and food chains. Absolutely can reach the US and Canada. Because the nuclear industry had a concerted effort to say, particles are too heavy, they can't make it to Canada. And these particles are 1,000 times smaller than anthropogenic pollution from industry that normally is factored into the pollution indexes of North America long pre-Fukushima. Right? So pre-Fukushima, your pollution indexes had a factor of pollution from Asia because the Pacific trade winds bring us straight across in just a few days, factored in as your pollution indexes, particularly during the summers. See? These particles we're talking about are 1,000 times smaller. They don't need the jet stream to get here. They're energy. So the plume is if there's no wind in the upper atmosphere or on planet Earth, just pretend there's no wind anywhere on planet Earth. Everybody's like, sure, Dana, there's no wind on planet Earth. Now just hear me out for a second. So the atoms, those plumes, they're pulsing energy at the speed of light, which means they're a machine. Each atom is its own machine, and it can propel itself. It's pulsing in every direction at the speed of light, but it means it's energy. It can just hover off the ground because it's pulsing energy. It never settles. You breathe it in. The animals will breathe it in. The birds are down there playing on the ground. They're breathing it in. It suspends on the ground. Fukushima is dumping the famous actor. Fukushima is dumping nuclear fuel into the Pacific, and the plutonium is named after the devil. And the curium isotopes, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods, different curium isotopes, that's what they call it, a curium, right? The melted reactor, the core is called a curium. But the curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium, which is named after the devil. View of a nuclear advocate as a sociopath. The entire biosphere at the risk from these poisonous fatals to everything with replicating cells, including bacteria. See? The entire biosphere is at risk. No, it's not at risk. It's destroyed by this despicable, coward, traitorous, monstrous nuclear scumbag secret death cult. That's the plutonium data from TEPCO, the corporation that doesn't have sovereignty over anybody or any country, is not a decommissioned authority, and is used to take the blame away from the nuclear industry. Oh, TEPCO done it! Not a nuclear industry. TEPCO was bankrupt right away and was nationalized. There is no TEPCO. It's the nuclear industry, see? They've been at this a long time. Fukushima radiation circling the globe, like the cover-up, they've been at this for decades. Everything's always been covered up. Fukushima radiation still circling the globe. Really no shit, Batman. Levels are consistently rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. As I showed you, it's a continuous plume. Right around the whole planet, and it's still coming out, making the plume thicker. When it comes to Fukushima, all species are downwinders. Well, downwinders, radioactive fallout, airborne fission products in the high Arctic after Fukushima. These are all studies. Behavior of radioactive cesium during incineration. Try wrapping your mind around that one. They got a study saying, the cesium gets loose again. It's absurd. And he kept doing it. They haven't stopped doing it. Burning it in incinerators right across the whole country. Done it here in North America, it's 100%, that's terrorism. They're dirty bombs. To burn a kilogram is the equivalent of a dirty bomb. Arrival of radionuclides released by Fukushima and the Canary Islands. Decontamination of radiation from contaminated vegetables from the Fukushima nuclear accident. Look at all the people with their names there. Look at that. You can't decontaminate vegetables. This is the nuclear industry justifying poisoning everybody. Oh no, all I had to do is wash it and shake it. You can send it to the market. This is what they're up to. It's like, these are lunatics. And they're talking about huge amounts, like 131 with an 8-day half-life. They used that. That was weaponized originally. Both iodine and cesium. They're nasty stuff, but that's not what you got to worry about compared to the curium and plutonium, which is going to be an exact same sample. See, they tell you that is dear, but they won't tell you what else is dear. And what else is dear is all the... This study should make you sick to your guts. So rather than evacuate people from the nuclear wasteland, look at the people who signed their name on that study there. They said that you can use shielding, like magazines that are 20 millimeters thick, or foam boards, or a wooden board of the same thickness. Protect from unnecessary radiation exposure. So what are you going to use? Where are you going to use this to, Dana? On your bum where you're sitting to. So, thickness, millimeters, which is that line over there. Radiation dose rates, and they're using unireceivers in a community far, far away, which means this is brutal doses. You want to be talking about the atoms that are floating around, not the unireceivers in those communities. So 16 sheets of newspaper is equal to 1 millimeter thickness. And corrugated cardboard is equal to 4 millimeter thickness of shielding that you want to use, right? You get it? So you need like 10 millimeters to 20 millimeters of shielding, so you're in your house, you're not, your bum where you're sitting to, you're not going to be irradiated quite as quickly. Now, not evacuate, not get out of harm's way, but just use, magazines or foam or cardboard or newspaper to shield yourself. Well, shouldn't I get out of here? No, you'll be okay. Keep growing vegetables. You know why they're shipping food out of the nuclear wasteland? Because if you look up nuclear power plants, they're all surrounded by farms. It's because they're gone in a murder mode against every species on the planet, but particularly humans. They're 100% in murder mode right now. Oh, by the way, the authors declare they have no conflict of interest. Well, why didn't you tell them to evacuate? How can you say... See, because like unireceivers, you think of unireceivers as like an energy, like heat from a stove. They try to do that to you, where it's not the same, but this is how they want you to think. But the unireceivers they're talking about is all these atoms floating around, pulsing energy every second, global warming, right? You're breathing that in. It's in your food, your glass of water now is saturated. You had radiation. I put a bunch of studies together, and I even put the little flags there because I'm foolish. So Germany, radioactive. South Korea was radioactive. Spain got radioactive. 100,000 times more in Washington. Far bigger accident than they were told. That's a study, by the way. Another study shown Russia pounded with radioactive fallout, because Russia's right there anyway. Romania pounded with Fukushima fallout. And plutonium-241, just that one isotope, 70,000 times more than atomic bomb fallout in Japan. Oh, if that's all it was, we'd be laughing, and that would be nasty, but it's absurdly more than that. Australia pounded by radioactive fallout. These are studies showing you in Italy all kinds of radiation was found. In Europe, there was 10,000 kilometers from the reactor, hot particles spread over the entire hemisphere. Oh, we know, baby, we know. France covered in radioactive fallout. Studies showing Vietnam covered in radioactive fallout. British Columbia covered in radioactive fallout. And this number here of 400 trillion becquerels of cesium on a continental scale is meant to downplay what actually happened. Cesium is nasty, but that's not what you're worried about. And that's not the actual number or even close to it. That's 40 trillion becquerels. It's just, it's not a lot, right? I'll show you what I mean. They're scumbags. Industry, nothing but scumbags. Hang on. Here. So 400 trillion. That's the number. And we'll go times 1. So the number stays there for me. Okay, so clear that. So a single gram is 78 billion atoms times 74. That's a gram. That's a curry. Now, a gram might have 6 curries or 120 curries in it, but that's one curry. So multiply that, say, by 100 grams. It starts climbing up. Multiply that by 1,000 more grams. Yeah, Dana, 10,000, 10 million grams. All of a sudden, the number climbs up. So all you're really talking about, I screwed that up, eh? Just give me 1 second here. I got a better idea. So 400 trillion So that's like 1/10 of a gram, right? But let's say it's a gram, atoms per gram. I'm sorry, not that. Divide that by 577. 772 000 equals 69,000 grams. But we know a gram could have 10 curries into it or 100 curries. But let's say each gram. So divide that by 29 to get ounces. And then divide that by 16 to get pounds. Is 149 pounds. That's provided that you're 149 pounds of cesium. But you're talking about 4 reactors, each had decades of reactor cores stored at the top of the buildings, and blah, 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 blah. You're talking about, say, 30 million pounds of fuel minimum. That's being generous, right? Or being conservative. 30 million pounds, that's actually all gone, not 149 pounds. So Lithuania covered in radioactive fallout. Taiwan covered in radioactive fallout. But they hit it. They had 2,000 students spamming the internet. Monaco was actually covered in radioactive fallout and studies. Serious threat to our oceans, environment, and society, communities from ongoing Fukushima releases. Unprecedented events with global consequences, far from over. Beijing covered in radioactive fallout. Greece covered in radioactive fallout. Plutonium at 1 million becquerels a cubic meter off Fukushima coastline. Liberia Peninsula covered in radioactive fallout. We're going to get through it. So it's everywhere. You got endless studies showing it actually showed up. They downplayed it, of course. Fukushima radioactive release into the ocean can continue for thousands of more years. Southern Poland, you guessed it, covered in radioactive material. 1 million becquerels a square meter on the west coast. Another study, 20 million particles per liter of rainfall on the U.S. That's absurd numbers. 220 million atoms in another study of iodine-129 per liter. It's absurd studies of numbers we're talking about. Letters from the U.S. West Coast, top Chernobyl. Really? Somebody's surprised? TV. Fukushima posed significant health risks to areas thousands of kilometers away. I showed you that. Fukushima plant is hemorrhaging radioactivity. And the big mystery is why its contamination is coming out now in such a hurry. It's called China syndromes. TEPCO fears marine life, or TEPCO fears, and you knowing what I'm showing you, fears marine life is being poisoned by the nuclear material flowing from the Pacific. As I showed you, it's airborne too, right? Fear of ocean contamination, flowing into the ocean. Situation at Fukushima is deplorable. Journalists, nobody even talks about Fukushima no more. I never shut up. Just a handful of us. That's it, though. The people of Japan are responsible for poisoning of the world's food chain. That's the way how you should look at it, obviously. But at what point should nuclear scientists go to the nuclear meltdown? What point? Right? What point should nuclear scientists actually go to the nuclear meltdown instead of the homeless? Should that happen? Should we allow them to be cowards forever? Just in 1 year, South Korea had to send back 6 million pounds of radioactive fish. You think Japan didn't know it was radioactive? Do you think that your country done the same thing? Do you think that 60 million pounds never slipped in? We're talking about generations being affected. No, we're talking about an extinction event. How are those in charge, how is the nuclear industry getting away with this? Time after time by just saying sorry. What do we tell the younger generation about what happened to our oceans? Well, there was a group of us, and we went to war every day, didn't we, folks? We stood tall before the man. Post-Fukushima horror, severe impacts on the oceanic environments, unpredictable amount of damage. It's an extinction event, for goodness sakes. Fundamental to the reproduction of humans. Japan is simply dumping the nuclear waste into the sea. That's all they've done, because there's only the homeless there, right? And the destitute and victims of society, because the nuclear industry refuses to go there. They refuses to go there. They're too good to go there. They're not even trying to come up with solutions. They're trying to get me and a handful of people to go away and stop talking about it. That's all they're doing. They're not trying to stop anything. They don't want it to stop. They hate us. They hate all the species. They hate all the animals. They hate all the insects. And they hate all humans. Humans are not bad people. The nuclear industry is bad people. I don't want to kill all the insects. I don't want to kill all the birds. I don't want to kill all the mammals. I don't want to kill all the emaciated whales. I didn't vote to do all of that. That's the nuclear industry done that. The nuclear industry does this, not me and you. We're not bad people. Sailor, after we left Japan, it felt as if the ocean itself was dead. Nothing. Now, this is $1 million yacht. Been doing it for decades, and there was nothing there. They couldn't believe it. We saw one whale appeared helpless with a big tumor on its head. And later that story was picked up and went viral. Picked up by The Guardian, the US Today, and many more. All failed to mention Fukushima. Try to blame it on your tin cans, your pop bottles, and your garbage, huh? New and improved version of the original atomic plague. The truth is so incomprehensible, it's easier to pretend it doesn't exist. That's what they've been doing for 75 years. And they won't even go to the nuclear meltdowns. Fukushima airborne plumes caused significant disposition of radioactivity over North America. Japan Foreign Minister, stop claiming the food is safe. We need him to speak back up. Worst case was abandoned Tokyo forever. We'll be fighting the radiation on the order of tens of hundreds of years. Resulting destruction will take half the planet with it. Nuclear engineer agreed Fukushima can be an extinction event. And Japan Times columns, the world's public worldwide sickens over time. The nuclear industry will yuck it up. The levels are consistently rising and falling in a 40-day cycle. Fukushima radiation still circling the globe. And the contaminated seawater will circle the globe too. The airborne is circling the planet. The ocean now is circling the planet. It's time to murder the nuclear industry, so to speak. I suggest we throw them off a skyscraper. We'll give them a blindfold and stuff like that. Give them a cigarette, blindfold, and we throw them off a skyscraper into the world's biggest wood chipper. Which is what we should be doing, yeah? Some generation's going to do it. Are we going to let the next generation get one up on us? I don't think that'd be cool. Well, good night, everybody. Hi, Dana Nasana. Hi, Joe Moore. 239 Joint. I hope you're doing good, Joe. Johnson. Dale P. Shane Clark. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, folks. barks and meows. Good night, everybody. Only serve one king, Lori. Boston, Danny San, Colette S. I'm glad. I don't expect people to watch every show. It's a tough subject, right? Anna C3. I don't expect anybody to watch these shows. I prefer to make their own shows. Beat the shit out of the nuclear industry. C. Brown. Good night, everyone. It's good to see everybody. Sandra Churchill. Hugs for everybody. I just scroll up through the names. Good night to everybody else watching this right now. And tonight, tomorrow, and next day. Sunday. Hopefully we're back Sunday night. Conrad, Scott Brady, James Olhan. We had a full house there tonight, boy. Awesome. Mr. Finnegan. If I missed anybody, I apologize. Thinker. Tim Norris. And the poll here in a second. Ella. Good night, Ella. You're welcome, Colette. And Victor. Hi, Victor. Shane Clark. Thank you. Let's come over and end the poll. What's the final tally? 45 votes. 44 said Fukushima nuclear meltdown scientists, nuclear scientists should work at the nuclear meltdowns instead of the victims of society and the homeless. And somebody said, no, I'm a nuclear scientist. I'm not going to Fukushima. We thank you for participating. And good night, everybody. Made it. What time is it here we're on to, Dana? Oh, it's 12:54 a.m. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I'll do my show later because I'm on the East Coast. Otherwise, it's early in the evenings, right? But it's hard, man. I'm here like, Fukushima! It's 1 a.m. Normally, I'm like snoring logs. I'm sawing logs normally at this time. I'm not a night person at all. But I got to do it because I'm on the East Coast. Maybe a half an hour in heaven before the devil knows you did, folks. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody. And toe days. I'm still unpacking. I still got to go out and pick up material for the studio. I got everything I need to finish off the garage. That I can think, well, except for hinges and locks and stuff like that. I'll get that. And still haven't got the Geiger counter hooked up. I'll get there hopefully Sunday. I can't find stuff. Everything's in boxes and bags all over the friggin' place. It's torture. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. See everybody in a couple days. Give us a thumbs up. And thanks for participating in the poll. Next poll will be, should pro-nuclear be prosecuted? Have a great night, folks.